God
You
bless.
go. And we are back between two edges on a special night in Miami on day 4 of the boat show, but you're not really tied to the boat show, are you?
Well, no.
So-
I'm not a boat guy, but I like boats too.
Okay. I'm here with ELO, who is a fellow Brit.
Yes,
How you
I
doing?
am a British, thank you.
You are a British.
I am a British, or I'm a Brit, or I am a Britannier,
a
or I am
Britannier.
whatever you call it.
Well, it's you.
You know,
We're
my
the same-
father
We're
said,
from the same. Well, we're not from the same mother, obviously, but you know, we are.
we're not from the same mother, but we're
realm.
from the same kingdom.
Yeah, from the same kingdom. But you
The
have
El Kingdom of Cool.
I wouldn't say British people are cool. You're cool,
Nah.
but you're the rare exception to the British type, I would say.
No,
We're normally
my father
reserved
used to
and
say,
boring and-
No.
By the time we get to our, are we the same age? How old are you?
I'm 45.
45. So you're about 5 years older than I.
Correct.
By the time
Well,
people get to our
I'm not
age,
saying
they-
correct that way. I mean, I meant I am 45, and you may be 40, but you look younger than 40.
I am. I'm 38. So.
Oh, so I'm 7
Thank
years
you.
older. Yeah.
Well, 5 seconds.
7. Okay.
Why the hell am I putting myself older anyway?
I was like, you look younger. I'm like, he aged good.
So we're in ELO's. What is? It's not really a. Is this a playground? Is this like your garage? Is this like your? How do
Well-
you, what do you describe? How do you describe it to people?
We're at Supercar Rooms, and Supercar Rooms is a brainchild of years of me owning cars and not knowing how to play with them.
Play with them, or where the hell to keep them all?
No. You see, if you want to keep cars, you put them in a storage facility and you forget them, which is what most people do.
Yeah.
I think cars are not just cars. They're a celebration of moments, automotive moments. And sometimes people look at them as cars, but I look at them as, you know, pieces of storytelling equipment. I mean,
Absolutely.
I love cars because I love the story associated with a car. When a car has no story, and that's why I don't own new cars, they just, you know, they have zero personality.
What is the newest car you have?
I have a 2010 Maybach, which I
Okay.
bought new, but it's a car that was only built 6, and I bought the last one out of the production line.
Now we asked your wife. You've got 200 cars. Is that right?
Yeah,
or does
correct.
She not know, or
It's
are a
very
few
correct.
That she doesn't know about.
Yeah, it's no. She
Yeah,
actually
there's a couple
knows
in the
of.
basement. That,
Well, she knows of everything, but every now and again something pops up, and she tries to. She says, "Is this new?" And I'm like, "No, it's been there." She's like, "Don't lie to me. I know when you're lying. Your eye is twitching."
Where they have shoes, you.
Well, the thing is, my father used to say, "The man with the most toys wins," and I kept that in my head. But he also said, having 2 cars is excess. Having 3 cars is madness. Having 4 cars, it's a virus. And I ended up with 200 and something. So I guess I have got terminal cancer.
Yeah, there's no cure.
The thing about it is because the cars all speak to me in different ways, shape, and form. And owning
yeah.
these cars, it's like owning a piece of automotive, history. No matter how
It's
big or
beyond
awesome.
history. I mean, the reason I've set up here, A, because of the light, but B,
The DeLorean.
we
Well-
know it's a terrible car. I mean, the history has told us it's a terrible car. It doesn't matter. Everyone wants one.
But you know what it is? Terrible is only subjective to whoever looks at it. Now, what do you need a car for?
Well, A to B. That can't do.
Well, that does A to B. It may take you 2 days to get to B, but it's not a Ferrari. It's not about performance. You see, what John Delorean set out to do, he wanted to do a very affordable sports car for the average Joe Blog who wanted to buy one. So if you were the guy who worked in a bank and you had a small salary of $30,000, $40,000 a year, you could afford to buy a sports
So
car.
that was the idea,
That
the
was
drive
the idea.
behind it.
Yes.
But then
But he wanted, yeah, well, he was set up. I know because
Oh, really?
I have done a lot of John Delorean talks. I do a lot of talks nationwide, and I go to seminars and talk about the art of the automotive history. And John Delorean is always a subject that comes up. I think he was set up. He was set up because he bit a bit more than he could control and manage.
Because it just went from 0 to 100 straight away, didn't it?
Not necessarily. Now, a
Factored
lot of
in
things
God
about
knows how much.
A lot of things about John Delorean people didn't know is that he is the inventor or he's the creator of the muscle car. Now, did you know that?
What nationality was John?
He was actually American, but he's a Romanian American.
Romanian American responsible for
born-
the muscle car.
Craze, yes. So John Delorean was a junior automotive designer for GM, General Motors. And then he got promoted because he was very talented and he came up with these amazing designs. In a most unfortunate situation, which was they brought him into, they brought him into revamp Pontiac.
Okay.
They brought him over to revamp Pontiac. In 1963, he was appointed head of the Pontiac division of the General Motors division. And he knew he had no tools because General Motors' babies at the time was Cadillac and Chevrolet. Cadillac was a rich man's car. Chevrolet was the average man's car for the day-to-day guy. And Pontiac was the old man's car. It was like the market, the demographic for the Pontiac was a 55 to 70-year-old guy who wants a comfortable luxury vehicle that you just get him from A to B.
And this is what, late 70s?
This is this is early 60s, 63.
What? Wow, okay.
So he was appointed, and he was a very young, and if you read about John Delorean, he was the youngest GM General Motors ever had because he was super talented. So they appointed him head of Pontiac, and he realized he had no tools. He had no tools. He couldn't do anything with Pontiac because he had no backing. They just set him up for failure. And
Do you know what that is?
yep, that's a Ford starting.
What, GT500?
No,
Okay.
that's a Ford truck
Oh, it's
with
a truck.
possibly a 305. Actually not a 305, a 289 or a 302, or maybe a 351. I'm not sure, but they all have that same noise.
Okay.
So he realized he had no money to resurrect the brand. So why did they give him a dead brand? So in 1964, he told his engineers, screw the program. I'm not going to build cars for 55 to 80-year-old guys dying. We're going to take our motor, which is a 289 motor, which was a Pontiac 289 motor, and we're going to put triple cabs on it, and we're going to make it the fastest car that we're going to show at the motor show in New York at the Motorama. Not knowing to the execs for General Motors, on the day the show opened, he presented the muscle car. They all looked at him, they're like, you just single-handedly killed Pontiac. Pontiac is a 90-year-old, a 55 to 80-year-old guy that buys a Pontiac. Why you give him 3 carburetors and try and push him into all this muscle? He goes, because even old men like speed. And then he got the attention of everybody because all the Pontiacs that were put into all the shops, all the dealerships, they were selling. Because all of a sudden people wanted fast sedans, sleepers, as they call it. Like,
I'm going to stop you for 1 second because as this story continues, this just shows how bad society and the media is. We only focus on the negative side of people's failure.
Correct. Back to where we're at. John Delorean was appointed head of the Pontiac division in 1963, going to 64. In 64, the Motorama, he comes out with a car called the muscle car. He didn't know what to call it. They said, what's a muscle car? They started laughing at him. He says, it's a car with packed up of muscle. Even old people like speed. It was so popular, the next car he brought was a GTO. When they interviewed him and said, why do you have a GTO? What does that stand for? He goes, well, Ferrari has a GTO, so I'll call my car a GTO.
God almighty. All right.
Now, in 65, the first GTOs, or the first, what they called, the triple cab Pontiacs were out. They were so popular that everybody took notice. All of a sudden, the big boys in the muscle car games, like Mustang, and more importantly, Dodge, said, F that. This kid has got a great concept. So they developed the Hemi. And the muscle car, in response to what John Delorean did. The muscle car race began by one guy.
A guy we never would have thought it would have been.
In
You
19
always associate that with Shelby or something.
Correct. No, all of those guys, the first guy to put the big motor in a small car was that guy. Anyway, long story short, Shelby then joined the race in 65, 66. Everybody joined on the bandwagon.
But it's amazing that
And then they fired him.
muscle car.
That's his.
It's such a stupid associate. It's a muscle with a car. It can't be. But yeah, I can imagine the first time somebody said it. It was like,
They thought everybody laughed at him in the 60s. They're like, this guy has totally lost his plunkers. Yeah, what the hell he's talking about? Anyway, he says, all the old men like speed. Long story short, after all of that, he became known as the muscle car guy. In 67, after they did so well, they thought this kid brought us to as much as we can, Pontiac. They fired him. When they fired him,
They fired him
They fired him.
because he was too good,
Well, the point is this.
or too disruptive.
They thought he was very, 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 very edgy. And he was very, very long-term, short-term, he did produce the results. But long-term, he was killing the brand. So they decided to bring back the Pontiac for old people. Classic, 3-speed, gliders, big couchy chairs. So they fired him. So he was so mad that he was fired that he became so disillusioned with life. So he went into depression. And then he said, you know what, screw these guys. I'm gonna make my own car. So he started asking for funding. He looked for funding all around the US, and everybody that promised him let him down. And a great idea came to him. That idea is called Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher decided to look at
Margaret Thatcher.
Margaret Thatcher, yeah. She started looking at people who might be able to bring industry to Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And John Delorean said, well, I'll do that. I'll bring my factory to Northern Ireland. And because of his past, of his CV,
She said yes.
Margaret Thatcher gave him his first big loan to set the whole thing up. The whole factories were set on taxpayers' money. And it was important to do that because they needed to keep Northern Irish people employed, keep them in Northern Ireland. There was a mass exodus of Nordish Irish people into mainland UK, mainland England. So they wanted to put factories in Northern Ireland so that Northern Ireland becomes self-sustainable, so as to fight against the IRA, because they needed that, Sinn Féin was pushing.
Holy hell.
This is all politics that you didn't get it. So he had a loan, but like most British loans, you got to pay back at some time.
Unlike an American one.
Unlike an American loan, you can keep rewriting it over and over.
I just found out reinsurance is a whole thing.
So when they came calling, obviously he had built this brand, DeLorean Motor Company. He had built his cars that were supposed to be the future. If you look at that car, stainless steel, it would never rust. Just the production of that car alone was, it's stainless steel.
Jesus.
Stainless steel, it's steel, but it's stainless, so it's coated with stainless. It shouldn't rust unless it's had a hit, it's had a damage, and the stainless, it's like a knife. It's your fork and knife. Your fork and knife never rust, stainless steel.
Yeah. But then
So-
what happened?
The cost of building was so expensive that it was never his money, it was British taxpayers' money, built in Northern Ireland. And then he thought he was gonna hit the market and it was gonna explode. But he didn't realize that the politics of building a car and selling it is different from the politics of just building a good car.
Yeah.
There's so many good cars that are built by so many individual people out there, but they don't sell it. When you control the market like GM, you can literally shut down the tap and open the tap anytime you want. So basically GM made sure he couldn't sell the cars. They shut him out.
So you
by
think it
making
was an utter way of...
No, it was very disruptive for everything GM was doing. For a guy that they had fired to come up with a concept, get the cars built in Northern Ireland to come back and sell them in the US of A. It was very disruptive. So it was not money ending back into taxpayers' money here. It was all money ending back into British taxpayers' money, and he wanted to sell it back in the US. So Margaret Thatcher called the loan, and he had
She
to pay.
called it?
Yes, because the loan had to be paid.
How long was he out for?
Well, about 2 years. It's in the second year. This is an 81.
God almighty, so he didn't have much time to get this thing going.
He didn't have much time to get it
I
going.
mean, Tesla is a complete and utter failure as a company, and he's still...
But he's a billionaire. He doesn't need no loans.
No, he just gets the
He just
fucking
prints his
carbon
money.
tax
Yeah,
rebates and everything.
that's it.
But so he didn't have that luxury of.
Margaret Thatcher called alone. Then his neighbor set him up. His neighbor was arrested for possession of cocaine for distribution. His next door neighbor.
He's as in
where he lived. Yeah. Yeah, in the
Distribution
U.S.
of cocaine.
Yes. So his neighbor knew that he was so desperate for money because he was trying to get money and raising money from everybody. His neighbors told the fucking Colombians, look, I need to get out of my deal with the DEA. The DEA want me to set somebody up big. And I think it was even a setup from the corporate side of GM. They all wanted him gone. He was a problem child. So they brought these guys who came in and offered him a whole bunch of 20 million deal if he basically agreed to get the cocaine shipped to England, put in his cars, and he did agree all of that in a hotel room. It's all documented. You should go watch a documentary. He agreed to basically get the cars, the cocaine brought into England, put that in the doors of the cars. So you see how it was designed? Look, it was designed so that he could put loads of cocaine into that big edgy part right there.
What?
He designed it afterwards to be able to move cocaine.
John Delorean. That's what John.
Because he needed the money to pay the British government back. And then after they signed the deal and everything, and they made the first delivery, and the first cars were fitted with cocaine and shipped here, he was arrested and was put in jail. And that was the end of the company. And Margaret Thatcher was stuck with a cocaine dealer, car manufacturer. So the whole thing came to an end overnight. In 1983, the factory was shut. The factory only lasted 3 years. And every now and again, they still do a big DeLorean reunion in Northern Ireland, where they talk about all the factory workers are still alive, about the 3 best years of DeLorean.
Is he still in prison?
No, he died.
He died.
He died, yeah. I'm in talks with his daughter right now to have a special on an event that I'm doing here for DeLorean. They're trying to make a movie of him.
There's a company somewhere rebuilding
Yeah,
them?
on the license. On the license from the daughter, from Jackie. Jackie's given this company in Texas license to rebuild.
How long was he in prison for?
He did, I think he was in prison for 25 years, 27 years, but he did some time and he was let out for reprimanded out, but he died. They buried him.
What?
You didn't know all of this?
No.
You should know your car stuff. Anyway, going back to DeLorean.
But this isn't car stuff.
This is the
That's
history of the.
corporate America. That's how
Yeah.
easily.
That's how they bury you if they think you're a threat to their
Yeah.
society. Yes. If these cars were built in Texas or in Michigan or any in the USA, he would have never had a problem.
Wow. Detroit don't have that kind of power anymore, do they?
Well, they're sold out. America's sold out to China and to Japan.
That's what that stands for, right? Detroit Motor Company?
No, DeLorean Motor Company,
DeLorean Motor Company.
DMC. He had plans to build another car. He actually built 2 gold cars. And the 2 gold cars, one was supposed to be sold to, is it Teddy Savalas? All in gold plated instead of,
Instead of that?
yeah. And the one was ended up in the collection of Peterson Museum. Was sold at an auction recently for over $1 million, but it's all gold plated.
God almighty.
But the story behind the DeLorean is he tried to do everything by the book, and I believe him.
Yeah.
And he was forced to do things outside the book in order to try and pay the British government and keep his legacy. The only thing that mattered for DeLorean was to keep his legacy.
Yeah.
And he lost his legacy by trying to keep it. How ironic is that?
It's just, I mean, I've never heard 90% of that story.
A lot of people don't know. Now, when people like DeLoreans, they only like it for Michael J. Fox and for Back to the Future.
But that's sort of what's
Made
great.
it iconic.
Yeah.
But it's not just that made it iconic. It's also iconic because it was a very short production car. It was very advanced for its time. It was very, very well engineered, but it had a bad motor because he had to do a deal. None of the American companies wanted to sell him a motor. Ford refused to sell him a motor because he was building in Ireland. So he had to go to the French to get a Renault 30 motor, a V6 Renault 30. The motors are French, yes. The early ones were Volvos. The second ones, Volvo
Do you think
motors.
if he'd gone with the Japanese, he would have had a better, could have been successful?
Oh, maybe, but I don't think Japan was on the map. Japan was doing its thing at the time. The Japanese
They didn't really
story
come
was,
in, did they?
yeah, no, they came in the 70s. The story with Japan is that Japan decided to grow into America, but they did it the smart way. So they worked out a deal, a Japanese collateral deal with Japanese USA trade deal. And it says we'll allow you to, the Americans said we'll allow you to sell your cars